I would say that in the human trajectory, one should consider the concept of peace, wo Lakota, and ask oneself, what is peace? Because peace for those who are benefiting from violence, extraction, dehumanization, those who sit in the seats of power and privilege and prosperity, for them, peace is something quite different. The most important aspect is that we can't let other nefarious forces, other violent forces, unjust forces convince us that we don't have power, because that is the easiest way to steal power. Science is a truth. It is a truth, but it is not the way, the truth, and the light, right? It is not the only way. And that's what has happened, is that the myth of scientific supremacy has taken hold.
Hello, and welcome back to Catalyst Talks podcast. Before we dive into this uninterrupted episode, I would love to share with you an awesome new masterclass that I have released called Liberation: Activate Your Power as a Creator. This is a beautiful way to discover the most simple path to unlock clarity, authentic power, and purpose, and liberate yourself from old stories, beliefs, and identities that no longer serve who you are and what you're really here to do. So if you've been listening to the podcast or listening to a lot of other podcasts, and especially on the one you're going to hear today, you might be like, well, what's my next step? How do I put this into practice? This is a perfect opportunity for you to carve out some time for yourself, do a little deep dive, and expand your power as a creator. If you're ready to unlock the magic, go to stephanie-trager.com. Please remember the dash, it's stephanie-trager.com, and you can download this free masterclass as a guided visualization for you as well, so you can activate your power as a quantum creator. Thanks so much for being here, and now enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Catalyst Talks podcast. Today, I am so grateful and honored to be joined by a remarkable human, Chase Iron Eyes. I'm really looking forward for this audience to know this person and who he is, the work he's done, and the work that he is being. Chase is a lifelong advocate for Indigenous rights and environmental justice, as well as the preservation and activation of Indigenous peoples' wisdoms and ancient teachings. And he's also the director of the Lakota People's Law Project, which is how I first came to know him, and co-founder of lastrealindians.com. Chase was a key figure in peaceful resistance against Dakota Access Pipeline. And he's a member of the Oglala Nation from Standing Rock, and he is currently working at the intersection of Indigenous sovereignty and environmental protection. As we drop in, there's the bio, and of course, everybody will be sharing all the links in the show notes and where you can learn more about Chase. And there's the bio, and then there's who you really are, why you're really here. And I see you as a spiritual connector, the lawyer, the activist, the protector. I'd like to hear how you see yourself, like who you are and what you're here to do.
First of all, thank you for that, Stephanie. And it's really good to be with you. And it's really a pleasure and an honor to meet everybody who is listening, everybody who's tuning in. We've entered into a different sphere in ability to communicate with each other and to stay abreast with each other. And sometimes people don't like that, but I remember what it was like before COVID when I actually went to work. And I kind of miss that. I miss showing up at 8 and leaving at 5 o'clock. I was born into the Lakota Nation, the Ocheti Shakoni, the Sioux Nation. I was raised on the Standing Rock Indian Reservation, which, like, the reservation didn't exist during Sitting Bull's time. I would say Sitting Bull around that time. If you know anything about Lakota history or Sioux Nation history, Sitting Bull is a key figure. And I mention him because he was assassinated on the Standing Rock Reservation. And I just want to give people a way to relate to where I was raised on the Standing Rock Nation or the Standing Rock Reservation. And then my wife, she was raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation, the home of the Oglala Lakota, the Oglala Band. And so we moved here in 2018. I went through all of the English thinking and English speaking, the Western canon process of education. I received the same skewed, misinformed, ill-informed, imbalanced education that the rest of the English speaking universe received. in these institutions, which denigrate the spirit, really. If you survive that and you're able to be with us here and you're looking back on your educational journey, you might not feel very fond of it. But nonetheless, we survived that. And I say that because a lot of people think of the tribal nation as completely like a foreign nation, right? That's how it appears in the law. That's how it appears in the institutions of jurisprudence in what is now called the United States of America. In the United States Constitution, there's language that references Congress's ability to regulate commerce between foreign nations, the states, and Indian tribes. And so the Europeans didn't quite know how to think of us, right? They followed to the best of their ability, I would say, given that era. But I grew up on the Standing Rock. I now live on the Pine Ridge. I'm an attorney. Not all the time, but sometimes I'm an attorney. I am a spiritualist, a seeker of truth, a seeker of knowledge, a seeker of wisdom, a lifelong student of what Chief Leonard Crodog called the University of the Universe. And so in matters of metaphysics, sacred metaphysics, ontologies, epistemologies, mythologies, cosmologies, the pursuit of human awareness, wo'ablaza kuapi is how we might say it in Lakota, pursuit of clarity, which is a lifelong pursuit. I'm engaged in that. I'm sure that, all of your listeners, and because we're both attorneys, we met in a different context, a completely legal context with the American Bar Association or something. I don't remember what it was. Is it environmental law CLE, continuing legal education credit session, which is quite different than what we're able to discuss here today. But
yeah,
I don't pretend to know the full breadth of what you've done with Catalyst, but I respect it, and I'm so glad that we were able to connect and I'm able to be on here today. But that's, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son. My mom's still here in this realm. I get back up to the Standing Rock Nation to see her and my brothers every chance I get, and I'm having a ball living amongst the Oglala Lakota, which is my dad's people. I was not raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation, but it's the Sioux Nation, the Lakota Nation, is spread out in what is now called South Dakota. We have 9 reservations that are in what is now called South Dakota. We have about 1, 2, maybe 3 reservations in what is now called North Dakota. Probably 4 or 5 quote unquote reservations in what is now called Minnesota. 1 in Nebraska, 1 in Montana, about 15 in what is now called Canada. And I speak like that just to reference my pre-contact, my pre-colonial force, legal force, spiritual force awareness of what I am and who we are prior to contact. And so yeah, that's good enough intro, I think, about where I'm at today.
Thank you. It's a gift to witness that question unfold in people and where it takes us in our memory, in our mind, in the field. For context, we did meet in about 2016, I think it was, and yeah, it was an environmental justice, continuing legal education event. And what's fascinating is the journey of holding like the desire for justice. For me, this is like where my mind is at right now. It's like this desire for holding the need, that innate primal need for justice, and knowing that fighting the question is fighting the energy, frequency, and dimension that's going to pull us into the future, our higher future potential.
I would say that in the human trajectory, one should consider the concept of peace, wo lakota, and ask oneself, what is peace? Because peace for those who are benefiting from violence, extraction, dehumanization, expropriation, and subjugation, those who sit in the seats of power and privilege and prosperity, for them, peace is something quite different. If a peace requires that injustice, then that is no peace at all. And that is what we inherited, and what we think is peace is a complete facade.
Yeah.
And I think the veil is being lifted. We were subjected to psychological terror, which is quite less than what the victims of whoever the determiners of who is it acceptable to bomb today in our geopolitical, economic reality. Those people are being subjected to atrocities that the psychological terror that I'm undergoing, or my children are undergoing, by having to watch it, in real time, live streamed. It's a much different thing. But we're told that that's peace, that this is required. Quote unquote migrants, who also have a pre-contact right to traverse these borders. Those populations whose labor is completely exploited and extracted, and a lot of times they're fleeing conditions that certain forces are instigating against other demographics and other populations, and they're being captured, snatched, grabbed, trafficked, detained without due process. And when you're doing that without due process, that's a concentration camp. Fighting is never, I'm no Buddhist, and I don't really know very many Buddhists, but I know there are some spiritual disciplines and pursuers of those spiritual disciplines who are sworn to peace. And that is good. That is good for those people to pursue that path. But what we've inherited here in this dynamic, in this dialectic, is not peace. And it's actually an instigation of violence against my true dignity. And so God gives those of us in this situation the right to defend the righteous from the wicked. So I'm not advocating for any certain action. I'm just saying it tears the soul apart for me to contemplate peace and nonviolence. Obviously, that is the righteous path, to be peaceful and to be nonviolent. But look at the other side of that. That is political violence that is being instigated against Americans, Canadians, the working class of the world, spiritualists, people who respect whatever your word for God is, whatever your word for the sacred is. What has confronted us with abstraction and separation and a disconnection from a sacred walk of life, the beauty way of life, a sacred metaphysics, that's violence. And that goads us into a way of life where our souls are grieving for ceremony. Human beings, the human population, is hoarded into pens of meaninglessness and cynicism and spiritual dead ends. That's what I would say, at least the English thinking universe since the quote unquote Enlightenment, that's where it has led us. That's where it has led however many people in the world speak the English language. I can't say the same for whatever China speaks, in Russia, in India. They're doing the same thing that we're doing as well, which is behaving like a virus. And so I'll just say that peace is our natural right. It's our birthright. It's our right to know peace. What we're living in, is not peace. Do you want to teach that to your children? Not necessarily. That is a grown-up perception about our reality on the planet.
Wow. The perception, I think, is such a key word. And for the snapping out of this delusional reality we're colluding with, it's required that we have a massive collective perceptual shift. And I think that's what we are all seeking answers for. Like, what is that, right? When we expand our perception, our aperture of perception, and we realize what is reality and connect the dots, do you believe that if there was this massive perceptual expansion where people like really can see what is going on, do you think that it will collapse? Or is this dominant force of mind control and narrative control?
I will say this, that to perceive and to engage in the creative action of gnosis, of recognizing that what is taking place here since the dawn of what is called civilization, what is called enlightenment, is actually domination. And to perceive that is one thing. But in order to pierce that veil and to transcend the conditioning and the limitations, that is first required. A spiritual liberation is first required. And that should logically lead to political and economic justice. And we're not naive. And when it was either Bodhi or Bodhisattva that went to the high mountain, the sacred mountain, and was going to achieve nirvana. And instead of achieving nirvana, felt it incumbent upon themselves to return back into the material realms to pick up a sword and to pick up the tools necessary to engage in the political struggle in the world of materiality, or the world that is the matrix, right? The world of the birth certificate and the social security number and fiat currency and all of the different ways that the cryptocurrencies and the digitization of reality, and further on into AI, and the mythology that the human being is engaging right now. I should say, not all human beings, but most human beings who don't have the capacity, the imaginative capacity to know what's happening to them.
Yeah.
They're just, they see that Elon Musk and some other billionaires are trying to travel to space and find a new planet where the human species can continue to propagate, because the virus mind has set up these circumstances within which we're destroying our host, just like a virus. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's true that 130 years ago, no indigenous nations were participating in that, but that's not the case anymore. We're 130 years into the colonial project, which has already swallowed whole and incorporated and absorbed all the people, not all of them, but maybe 90% of the people in these countries that call themselves or identify as white or European or American or Canadian or Australians or New Zealanders. That colonial process has already happened to that demographic in Europe 1,000 to 6,000 years ago. So when I'm talking about the colonial project, some people might be thinking of it in terms, and it's not incorrect to think of it in terms of a certain phenotype committing colonial violence and subjugation on another phenotype. But that's not really what I'm referencing. I'm referencing the virus-like imbalanced way of life that is a prerequisite to the conditions that we find ourselves in, for the conditions from which we're all trying to graduate. Yeah. We don't like that anymore. We fully recognize that is spiritual death, and it's going to kill the entire planet. But the forces that have control of these levers of power or perceived power that regulates our lives, they don't seem to want to change. And those of us who do have and recognize our spiritual authority and our divine dignity, those of us who recognize that have to go forward. And even though, we may be beset on all sides by all manners of, against all the odds that are stacking up against us. For instance, at Standing Rock, when me and 20,000 other people in this country are standing up against big extraction and corporate fascism, when we're doing that, they labeled me as a terrorist, right? And look at the Occupy movement. Look at any organic movement in this country. The noose just gets tighter. And so it is important for those of us who have the luxury of pursuing divine philosophy and creating a meaningful, kin-like relationship with the sacred elements of the universe. And by this, I mean recognizing that you're not separate from the elemental powers. In the same way that those societies and those seekers throughout the ages recognize that. And that is the story. That is the dialectic. We're always standing up against unjust imposition of tyrannical authority, right? In any age, whoever's trying to censor those who are trying to speak and seek the truth, those are usually not the guys who are the good guys. They're usually not the righteous. They're usually the wicked. But the righteous have in their minds that They can only achieve justice through peace and nonviolence and prayer, when in fact it takes action. It doesn't take responding to violence with violence, because that's how you end up dead or in prison, when you're facing the kinds of enemies that humanity is facing. They're not my enemies. They're not a certain racialized class or anything like that, but they're forces that are trying to rob the spirit of its vision. And those are Tecumseh's words. And we're not fighting any different fight than what Tecumseh was facing, what Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse were facing, what Tom Paine was facing all the way back. And so right now, it's even the stakes get higher as technology advances its grip and its ability to extract spiritual potency from human beings. That's what the device is about, is to turn us into the commodity, into the product. So in Native people, Indigenous people, we've been written off for a long time. We've just been thought of as these superstitious, subhuman, Stone Age anomalies, these phenomenon, these outdated, anachronistic, what are these things? If I'm European and I'm inheriting all of the doctrinal perceptions of what I am as a Christian European, then my thoughts about women are property under that rubric. Mm-hmm. Black people, Africans are slaves, or 3/5 a human being. And Native Americans, those are subhuman. There's some other creature. And so that, deconstructing, unlearning those imbalances is a very big part of spiritual or intellectual liberation. That is the path that we're on. That is the path that will stand a person upright and not allow those corporate fascists to instigate violence against our families. Those are my thoughts on, what peace is. I didn't engage violence. I didn't engage non-peaceful methods of asserting my rights, my natural rights, my birth rights to clean water, to breathe the air, right? Yeah. This is so elementary, but the colonial project is it continues to absorb and erase and incorporate. It's just like Xerxes, what Xerxes was trying to do. That's what's happening right now. And you have to fight for your spirit and your soul. If not, there's forces out there, that's what they're engaged in. They're engaged in assimilating everyone into one block. But the ritual life, the ceremonial life, the knowledge and the wisdom that human beings intrinsically are on a path to seek that connection. There's a lot of distractions in that path. And Native people, especially like the nation that I was born into, we're not very far removed from Buffalo days, right? The Buffalo and Teepee days. We just speak English now. That's the only difference. We're not any smarter than my grandmas and my grandfathers from pre-1900s. We're just able to communicate it in a different way and correlate to the other people who are picking up what I'm sharing here.
There's something that we said this word once, and it's a word I want to dive into with you, and that's sovereignty. It's a newer word for, say, the white American or a lot of people, right? It's like the kind of word in the zeitgeist right now around freedom and rights and justice. And so it has a different word that's a different meaning, say, for me than it has for you and your people. And it was like the early 1990s. I first was introduced to, I would say introduced, I was first awoken in my spell of the indoctrination when I moved out to California, and I was a forest activist in the ancient redwoods and tree sitting, and that was my unlearning. And oh my God, how was I just unlearning and learning of more of the truth. And I remember back then, it was a lot of solidarity with Indigenous and Native people around the United States and the world. And Leonard Peltier was the name back then. Pine Ridge, Wounded Knee, like these were the teachings I learned at the same time I was learning about Monsanto. Like I have the old, like printed newsletters of these things, like the activist groups. And so that was my, oh my gosh. And since then I've been just seeking and on that path and remembering. And so for me, since then, it's been the in and out of, oh gosh, we have to fight, like, look, they're
Mhm.
and in and out of wanting to fight and wanting to spread the spiritual awakening. How can I do both? Because I know when I get in the justice, then I attract more reasons I need to have justice, right? Versus it just is. And so I'm in that right now. And for me, that just is part of like, is connected sovereignty. So I'll park that there. I want to hear you speak to that.
That is a great word. Sovereignty, liberation. Sovereignty does mean something very peculiar to Native American people or tribal nations. And you use the word spell. Think of any language and the English language as a way to cast spells, and the law as a way to provide a limited framework within which human beings can forever in perpetuity just engage each other.
I'd say play on the court.
Yes, play on that court, play in that little contained field. That's what the law is, and that's what it was always designed to be. The law order protects capital and property, and that own capital and property. And for the longest time, women could not own capital or women were property, and women couldn't open their own bank accounts until the 1970s. So all of the demographics that are targeted by that kind of male dominated aspect, those demographics know exactly the imbalance, the power imbalance. Wasn't always like that. Wasn't always like that corporations obtain personhood, right? That was a Santa Clara Railroad case in the late 1800s that went to the Supreme Court. Whatever journey it went through, all the way up until Citizens United now, where corporations have the same right as you and me to free speech. They don't have a limitation. They can buy elections. And that's what's happening. Are there any warriors in Congress? Are any of God's sentinels in the Senate? No. These are spineless people who, and who knows, if I wanted to be president of this sovereign United States of America, I've got to be willing to commit mass murder. Somebody's getting bombed. I'm president. Somebody's going to get bombed. And I'm going to have 10,000 souls, in my conscience. Maybe 20,000, maybe 50,000. Who knows? Like, who decides who's to be bombed in this world? It's the same as in this country. Who decides who has to be on the other end of state violence and be shot down, unarmed and on camera, over and over and over again? Sovereign is a very loaded word. Sometimes I joke around with my daughter because I think of what words would mean to me if I was a white man, right? A white male, a European male, a property owning, capital owning European male. What would the word sovereign mean to me? It would mean my ability to maintain my superior reign, my superior rule over and against the others in a feudal system. If for me, I'm on the other, I always say I was born on the wrong side of oppression and expropriation and extraction. I was born on the wrong side of that because I'm always having to fight against the instigations of violence and oppressive measures that confront me on all sides. It's a slow genocide for Native people. But the right to be sovereign, the right to provide for oneself, the right to eat healthy food and to drink clean water, to live in energy efficient, or at least have energy efficient options available to us for housing. I'm not saying that any of that has to be free. Nothing's free. None of it has to be free for human beings. But if I'm the controllers of the extractive petrochemical prison that is the economic reality that I impose, if I'm Kelsey Warren or Big Oil, I don't want hemp competing with petrochemical plastic, even though there's plastic masses the size of Texas floating in the ocean. And my system is going to kill the planet. So your children won't have clean drinking water. All of my oil pipelines are going to be right next to it, like at Standing Rock. I'm not going to change that system. That benefits me. I got first class seats on the Titanic. If I'm in that seat for big extraction or whatever it is, Monsanto, if I'm big agriculture, do you think I want these local yokel farmers and ranchers in the Dakotas or wherever else, Nebraska, Iowa, wherever else? You think I want them to be able to have healthy soil? What are you talking about? I'm going to sell them my stuff that's going to poison their monoculture. It's going to destroy their soil. So they have to buy it from me. If I'm any of the big water companies, do you think I want human beings having access to clean water? No. One day you're going to buy it from me. One day you're going to scan some kind of little RFID chip under the faucet and it's going to dispense some water. That's what I want if I'm in that seat. And so sovereign means a lot of different things to a lot of different demographics. And even though I was born into a certain demographic that is on the receiving side of violent oppression, I also subjected myself to the Western canonization process in the academic institutions. I also understand from that other side, and not everybody in the other side is privileged. Think of all the white working class families right now. Think of all the white ranchers in the Dakotas that are watching Trump give their competitor 20, $40 billion in Argentina and crashing their markets because of the tariff systems. You know what I mean? Like the baser level of awareness about like those who are racist to each other, that's a very effective way to put each of those demographics contained within this oppressive system. So those of us who are trying so hard to graduate from those states of injustice, you just have to keep going and you have to keep pushing. You have to believe that people are smart enough, that they do, given other circumstances, if they didn't have a hierarchy of needs that they had to think about meeting every single day, they didn't know where their next meal was coming from. You have to give them the same benefit that if those needs were taken care of and that maybe, they received a fair wage. It was just Veterans Day, and I got to sit back and I got to watch everybody say Happy Veterans Day, and I support the troops. Yeah, we all support the troops, but why aren't the troops getting a percentage of a minute fraction of what the Dick Cheneys of the world are getting, right? For the quote unquote war on terror. 1 billion or 1 million Iraqis dead and 32 billion that Halliburton and Dick Cheney made from my brother's sacrifice, from my cousin's 30-year fight with substance abuse. It's never them that are asked to make those sacrifices. It's never them that are asked to live or die. It's never been that way. It's not for those in those seats to live next to the sacrifice zones of their oil pipelines or of their uranium mining or their lithium mining. And so there's a lot going on, and human sovereignty, human rights, my ability to recognize who I am as a human being without a member of this race or a member of that nation state or without any kind of synthetic enforced identity. That is sovereignty. That's God's sovereignty. Whenever you use words like prayer and God, it never fails. If I use the word prayer or God, somebody in the audience will have gone through a certain dogmatic psychological violence or attempted erasure of who they are, and then attempting to absorb them into the doctrinal network of Christianity, or maybe I've never heard it from a Muslim or whatever, but I always hear it from the Christian demographic. When you use the words praying God, maybe it's because of the way those particular people were brought up and what they were subjected to, much like the boarding school for Native people.
Yeah.
They have there's kind of a repulsive thing that happens. And I don't want to offend that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about like the sovereignty that inheres in a human being by virtue of divine birth and divine flesh and blood. That kind of sovereignty, which is like gnosis, that is the most important sovereignty. Our human efforts to uphold the covenants with the sacred world, which Native people are still doing. We still do it on a seasonal basis where I live. And, that is the most important kind of sovereignty. Then from that, is the kind of sovereignty that we have to contend with. We're not naive. The nation state is here. The Westphalian nation state has progressed over time, and now, the nation state with militaries and with the latest technologies, you need that because everyone's playing the same war game. All the G20 is playing those war games with each other. And so I'm not saying that we shouldn't be competitive in those realms, but we should be thinking very clearly about giving up our lives and our rights to corporate fascism, because that's what's facing all of us right now. So that human sovereignty, which leads to birthrights and human rights and constitutional rights next to that. Constitutional rights are the lifeblood of Americans. And right now, the corporate fascists are violating those rights, just like they did to us at Standing Rock. Our rights to speak freely, free speech rights are being quelled. People are being punished for talking about different geopolitical phenomenon. People are being punished for speaking about certain agencies capturing, grabbing, snatching, and detaining other certain demographics. People who are peaceably assembled in certain public spaces are being arrested. Like it's coming. The surveillance state. There are rights to be free from illegal searches and seizures, and our rights to privacy. They're not intact and protected in a way that maybe the founders of this country had envisioned, or those who've never had to stand up and fight for their peace. They don't know the nefarious nature of corporations and fascists who already have control of our institutions and our arms of state power.
What you were talking about before, the mental colonization of anyone who is not aware that their mind is colonized, that they've been cast under a spell, right? We spell words when we write them. That's the sovereignty that I tune into personally. And I think, right, that's what longing to know who we are. And I think origin story, when you were just talking, it's like blurting out I'm just seeing this. I'm like, it's the disconnect from origin story. So I was just traveling in Egypt, and like, it's actually illegal in temples and sacred places to be teaching, to be doing any ceremony, but also to be teaching the Cometian wisdom, the ancient wisdom. Egyptology is the textbook, right? It's the teachings, which it's of history, and it's not true. And so for some reason, it's illegal to be teaching true history, the real history, which is actually the portal to decolonizing our mind. And so when you were just saying that, I'm thinking about origin story and how disconnected most of us are from our origin story. And so much of the call to Indigenous wisdom and the curiosity and the pull is, wow, origin story, hearing it, knowing it, gobbling it up. We don't know ours, right? And so can you speak a little bit about the origin story of your people and how that serves as medicine, as the fuel for...
Yes, you're absolutely right. Even if one has been separated from their sacred knowledge, their sacred origins, there are other spiritual disciplines out there that you can find guidance from those and within those. And also the potency of your spiritual constitution. Sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you're experiencing phenomena, where you're perceiving things that either defy the laws of physics as you've been taught that they are, or you might hear something or see something that others are not seeing or hearing. And what does our society do with those kinds of experiences? It puts you in a certain place where you don't have autonomy. And so every human being has this potential. This is why we have ceremonies where you deny to yourself food and water, for instance. All cultures have fasting as part of the ritual manner in which a human being prepares oneself to petition and potentially receive divine guidance. Humblechea, right? Vision questing. That's all cultures in the world have that. Most all cultures have a ceremonial sweat lodge. I mean, Oini Kara, that's what we call the making of new breath, renewing oneself in the cosmic womb, right? Inside the sweat lodge. But all of these tools and instrumentations of transcendence that at least, the culture that I was born into has these things, even though they were declared illegal, even though my teacher and his teacher, they were conducting these ceremonies when they could be put in prison for them. But they survived underground by the grace of God, by the powers of creation. And my particular lineage has several creation knowledges, and I will just share a couple. And one of them, you can look it up. There's one of our luminaries, his name is Pete Ketches. Pete Ketches Sr. He and his son founded an organization called Ocetiwakan. Ocetiwakan, Ocetiwakan. It means sacred, sacred fireplace, sacred hearth, sacred a place for coals, really. Ocheti means a lot of things, but sacred fireplace is what it's still around. It's still operating on the Pine Ridge Reservation, Ocetiwakan. Pete Ketches, you listen to him and he'll tell the story of a blood clot, of blood and water, of a mass, a microorganism containing clot, mass of blood and water that was in the field somewhere near the Black Hills. And buffalo, and this is before human beings walked the earth. Buffalo were here and they were roaming in the way that they do. Buffalo have to be in certain places at certain times according to the constellations, but they were in mid-transit, and this woman buffalo, a female buffalo, is hearing this voice. She hears Wani Wachielo, which means I want to live. And so she hears it. She's looking for it. She doesn't see anything on day one. She goes back to her camp that night and she tells the other buffalo, hey, I heard something out there today. Wani Wachielo, something is expressing a will to live. And they just were like, you're crazy. You're hearing things. She goes out day two, hears it again. Same thing. She goes back, tells the group. And it's like Horton hears a who, right? She sees a speck. The rest of the group is not trying to hear all that. On the fourth day, it is said by Pete Ketches that the buffalo goes back to the clot. And this is where the buffalo breathes consciousness into this clot, and that clot grew into the Lakota, the human being. Anytime I use the word Lakota or Indian, just think human being. The Lakota became the younger sibling of the buffalo. And so there's a lot to unpack in that knowledge. It hints at evolutionary creation. We have a whole system of knowledge for knowing the evolutionary path. Now we're not going all the way into things and with the hadron colliders and splitting atoms and getting it to quarks and then trying to see what's whatever else is in there. We don't do all that, and it's okay. Science is a truth. It is a truth, but it is not the way, the truth, and the light, right? It is not the only way. That's what has happened, is that the myth of scientific supremacy has taken hold and really has secularized the planet. And that's not a good thing in my view. And so that's one knowledge about how human beings got here. Another is, and we have one related to the Great Flood, but we also have one about coming out from Wind Cave, which is a national park in what is now called the United States. And I'm about 90 miles or less, maybe 60 miles from Wonia Oshoke, or Wind Cave. It's called Wind Cave National Park. It's on the southern edge of the Black Hills, where there's another, that's what America does. Like the Mount Rushmore is there. America is very young. Imagine if I went to Europe and now all of a sudden I'm telling a story that, hey, I'm the explorer, I'm the discoverer. I discovered this, I planted my flag here, and I read some crazy Recramento and I just own this place now. And oh, this is I'm gonna take this Stonehenge and I'm gonna carve up some Indian chiefs' faces in it, and this is my sacred site now. This is my national park now. This is the Sioux Nation City Bull and Crazy Horse National Park. What used to be Stonehenge has my chiefs' faces on there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Again, a lot of people they're being conditioned. What is happening to our children in American educational institutions is what the same thing that North Korea does. What Kim Jong Un and the Kim dynasty is doing to its children. This exact same thing is happening. But Wind Cave, right? Back to Wind Cave. See, if I start talking about spiritual and at least a political, and then I'm down a rabbit hole. There was a time, and this is a long story. There are some resources out there though. Sons of the Wind. We were very grateful for. I forget who did Sons of the Wind. I forget the name of the author or the editor. I think her name is Bev. There are universities like Sinte Gleshka University in Rosebud Reservation, Oglala Lakota College. I got a good friend that's the head of the Native American Studies Department. There are people who are aware of the knowledge systems of our people, the Lakota, the Sioux Nation, and how we need to cultivate those and grow those and proliferate those. But back to Wind Cave, there was a time when human beings, whatever we were back then, we weren't necessarily in the form that we are in now. And we were subsisting on white plants that have no roots, no flowers, no stems. I have to think that those were mushrooms. Those were fungi of some sort that we were subsisting on. We also used to serve the spirits white food, the Council of Gods. And that came way before this particular time that we were inside the earth. And who knows, maybe we went inside the earth as a result of the Great Flood. I don't know the linear time frame of these knowledges, but we were inside the cave and there were entities that were banished here to earth. The trickster, the wizard, and the wizard's wife, Wakanka is her name. And also they have a daughter named the double-faced woman. And they're entities, nefarious entities, passionate entities that work for the negative source of energy in the universe. They're here in the earthly realm, and we're underneath the earth. And for some reason, the trickster, who his name is Iktomi, the trickster. But before he was the trickster, that's why, it's a longer story about how he became the trickster. Kind of like a fallen angel. It's the same kind of concept. This guy's at the right hand of the gods. He's the counselor of the gods. And then he's manipulated by these nefarious forces. And anyway, they successfully manipulate him. He agrees to embarrass the gods at the behest of these other forces that are here on the earth when we're inside the cave. And then the trickster sends down into the cave a wolf. It said he sends a wolf. And whether the wolf is bad or not, that's not clear. But maybe he manipulated the wolf. But on the wolf's back is this pack. It's this bundle, and the wolf goes down, and he's talking to human. He's trying to talk to the human beings. He's asking, "Who's your leader? Who's your chief?" And that's a man named Tokahe. That is the leader of our people. So the wolf goes to Tokahe, and all of the people, the pre-human beings, are surrounding Tokahe, and they're looking at this wolf. And the wolf, this bundle unfurls. And inside the bundle you can see the brilliance and the vibrancy of the flowers and the plants and whatever is growing on earth, whatever can grow on earth. And at the same time, you can hear the most beautiful auditory experience of all this, the beautiful songs of the birds. You imagine those experiences whenever you may have reached a sublime state and you hear the water flowing and you feel the warmth of the sun on you, and you hear the brilliant songs of the birds that carry you, that are activating different vibrational frequencies than even the song of human beings can attain or approach. And then, he takes out this smoked hide and he says, "Here, feel this. Feel how soft this is. Feel this hide. Wrap yourself in it. See how it provides warmth. Smell that. Smell that smoked cedar, and the way smoked hide smell for the native person is like intoxicating, right?" And so they're showing us all of these senses, all of these five senses, six senses, whatever it is, they're activating them. And this is a story, this is a knowledge. And so a lot of cultures have stories about coming out of caves or coming out of ignorance or whatever. But the thing that seals the deal for the human beings is that this wolf then gives to Tokahe some buffalo flesh, some buffalo meat. And as soon as the human being eats that meat, eats that flesh, then it says, okay, what do you want us to do again? You want us to go out from this cave that God, the power, the sacred powers themselves told us to stay in this particular place. You want us to violate God's word, and you want us to go out to the surface with you? That's what you want us to do? And he's like, yeah, and you'll have all of these things, but as soon as he ate the buffalo flesh, he didn't even question it. He's like, let's go to the surface, whatever's out there. If you got this out there, I'm game. We're going to do that. So we violated God, the covenant that we had with God. We violated God's word. That's the self-determinative will of a human being. These types of knowledges are not distinct or peculiar or to us. Most all cultures have these kinds of myths, these kinds of stories. And so we come out onto the surface and everything is all good because it's summertime. You can hear those birds, you can smell the sweet smells. We've got the hides, we've got everything that was promised, but then winter comes and then it all disappears, right? We're starving. Now we're cold. Now we don't have anything. And the trickster is sitting over there laughing at our misery. The trickster is genuinely satisfied that we're suffering and that we're in misery. And what do? We run back to the hole, to the cave from which we emerged, and that hole has shrunk up, and we can no longer go back in there. And we plead to God, the Creator, please deliver us from this. We've made a grievous mistake, and we're sorry. And the Creator says, you have to live with the consequences of your decisions. And so we don't get to go back into from where we came. And now we're here. Now we're here in this realm. So and there's various knowledge about what happened to those that went back to the cave and tried to get back in. Some say they turned to buffalo. Some say they turned to stone, and some say they're, a precursor to who we are today, to the form that we're taking today. But that is you find that kind of story in the Hindu traditions. The 9 gates to the city of heaven, or what, I might be mixing that up, but it's about the senses.
Same thing, yeah.
It's about the senses. It's about the potency, the strength of the human self-determinative will, and it deals with a lot. And so I began to explore those knowledge systems. I wasn't taught those. I didn't get to ask, my grandmother or my grandfather, because they were kidnapped by the United States of America and put in these euphemistically termed boarding schools, right? They're cutting our hair. They're delicing us. They're putting kerosene. They're making us bathe in kerosene. And if we're speaking our language, they're making us kneel in the corner on broomsticks, and they're beating us, and they're sexually assaulting us, and they're subjecting us to horrific, unimaginable terrors. Why? To make us like the rest of them, to eliminate the sacred imaginative capacity of a human being, to steal from them, to rob them of their sacred vision, their potentiality towards that. That's the story of the colony. But because we're indomitable. You can't make us go extinct, even though that may be what the nefarious forces want. Instead, now we speak English and we're able to share the depths and the source of our cosmovision and of our knowledge systems with the rest of the world, and they can't disrespect us anymore. They can't just simply mock us anymore because they control the airwaves. No, people want to know more. They want to go more in depth. And people like me want to reach out and grab their hand and learn what you know. I want to know what your spiritual disciplines and traditions are. What informs your path of righteous knowledge, and how
Mm.
can we bring those together? Mitakuye oyasi. That's what we always say at the end of a ceremony or the end of a quote unquote prayer, sending our voice. We say mitakuye oyasi, which means everything that is my relative. It's a way of conceptually creating a kinship relationship and piercing through the abstraction and the separation that has happened to the human soul over time, that has made us
Mm.
afraid of the dark or made us think that we're separate from nature. That path, that the red road, that spiritual path is available to all of us. In many different cultures, the word hierophany comes to mind, a sacred revelation. We're all seeking various levels of sacred revelation. And we can get there through our intellect. That is one way that you can get to a place where logos, you can guide yourself into a state of awareness. But you can also go through ceremonial and ritual practices. You can avail yourself of the sacred power of the drum, or you can avail yourself of the sacred power of the voice. And you can combine those. You can sing, you can drum, you can dance, you can blow an eagle bone whistle. In my culture, in many other buffalo cultures who have the sun dance, right? which is which is just maybe I got to live for a little more longer to talk really about the Sundance. But there are people alive who can, Dickie Moves
Mm.
Camp, Richard Moves Camp. He has a book out called My Grandfather's Altar. It's not about the Sundance, but I've recently noticed Dickie Moves Camp coming out in public. I saw him in public for the last time, 2024, August 2024. Richard Two Dogs, Rick Two Dogs, and I don't, I some of these guys want to remain hidden. They're not out there trying to do what I'm doing. Leonard Crow Dog, he passed on. He transitioned to the spirit realm June 5th, 2021. He was a mentor. He mentored the intercessor that I rely on, was a mentee or is a mentee of Chief Crow Dog. And Crow Dog took a special liking to me and always made it a point to recognize me. My name is Iron Eyes, so you say Ishtamaza, which means Iron Eyes. Ishtamaza, Hiwo, Toshka Iotaka. Come, nephew, come sit by me. He was about to start a ceremony, and he tells me to come sit by him, and I go sit by him and in these ceremonies, that's probably why those nefarious forces want to erase our power, because we have this ability to pierce right through corporal reality, through these instrumentations, or I even hesitate to call them technologies because that's like doing them a disservice. These are sacred gifts that human beings have. And, things that challenge your perception of reality and corporal reality and the laws of physics, those happen all the time in our ceremonies. That's heavy content. Yeah, you might have had to been studied a little bit to get some of that and really to receive it in a way that you can then create meaning from it and inform your own practice, your own day-to-day practice.
Mm. Yeah. I'm so grateful and really appreciate you gifting us this. And for anyone listening, listen a few times because it's there. I think it's that perceptual capacity to receive what you're saying. And even if you don't necessarily intellectualize it and think you know it, you're receiving it. It's a
Yeah.
key. Like those, like not, maybe they're not instruments or tools or technologies. They're certainly keys, right? And even hearing these stories, they're keys to the unconscious knowing, because we still know we are who we are, even if we don't
Mhm.
remember yet. And we're remembering. So I thank you so much for this gift of remembering. And I'm curious to know, like, they're the yugas, right? The Kali Yuga, the long calendar, the epochs, the worlds, the different names for the great turnings and the different time periods. And so the story of coming out from underground and then the stone closing, is there a prophecy of potential for the next
Yeah.
evolution?
We're no different than any other human family.
Yeah.
We make mistakes. As you can see, we disobeyed God before. We sometimes we exercise hubris. We sometimes go out of balance, and then we end up in a drought, or we end up starving. And this is one such time that we were, maybe preparing to go extinct. Things were very, very bad, and we couldn't find any food. And they sent two warriors out to find food, and instead they see this spiritual phenomenon that is a woman, but she's no ordinary woman. She's maybe glowing a little bit. She appears to be floating from a distance, and two men approach her, and one man is overcome with his lust and materiality concerns and sensory pleasures. And so he's thinking those kind of thoughts about this woman. And he begins to approach her, and immediately a cloud envelops him and leaves him as a skeleton with snakes and slithery things crawling around him. And the other guy, probably scared shitless, is saying, he's not thinking like that. He's thinking in complete reverence, right? For the sanctity of this woman. Now, again, that represents the breadth, the gamut of how humans are thinking of their nature. But he's not thinking that way. The second guy who lived, and the woman tells him, go back to your people and prepare a lodge for me. I'm going to come, and I have something for you. You who are suffering, you who are in peril, but you who are worthy of deliverance from that. And so she returns on the appointed day in the morning time, and a certain lodge is built, a council lodge. And the chief of that people, Chief Standing Hollow Horn, they prepare sweetgrass water and maybe another sacred food. If there was no other sacred food, it was just water. And this is a duty. When a guest comes in our home, we still do that to this day. You feed them, or you give them water. You offer them water. And this woman comes, and she brings a bundle, and she gives to this particular band of Lakota. And Lakota doesn't just mean like the race that I am, right? Lakota is a state of mind. Together in love forever, or to be a good relative. That's what Lakota means. To be a good relative, to be aware of your kinship obligations to the universe and to other human beings. That's what a Lakota is. And so she gives this chanupa, this sacred pipe, to this band of people, and they're called the Itazip Chola, without bows. She gives them this, and she says there will be 7 ceremonies that come with this sacred instrument that will provide order, divine order, from my people, who are the buffalo people. Because as she's going away, she brings this prophet, brings this to our people, and as she's leaving, she rolls on the ground 4 times, and she turns black, red, yellow, and then white. At the end, she turns white, and then she leaves. Now, this is the daughter of one of the gods, right? This is the daughter of Shkan. That's a longer story about the gods, but this is obviously a divine prophet, a woman that is a divine prophet. And we're still living with the instructions that were given by this divine prophet. And in fact, Orville Looking Horse is the 19th generation keeper of that instrument. And it's still here with us, right? That particular pipe. And every other pipe, quote unquote, peace pipe, Catlinit is based on that particular pipe. But that, and she says that if we are to get out of balance again, I will return. So we're not just left in that void, in this lurch. We have the ability, if we uphold our end of the covenant, which means to do the sacred ceremonies that we're doing, but importantly, to take action to make sure that the other relatives, the Wahutopa, the animals and the beasts, We don't have a word for animals or beasts. We have womakashka, and human beings are part of that classification, right? We have to make sure they have the ability to pursue their destinies and to live their lives. So we can't put fences and roads and gridlock everything. We can't dam up every single river because when we do that, we're diminishing our spiritual potential, right? And you can find a bunch of great Native American chief quotes about this particular subject. Man is only, what is it, a web? Whatever that quote is by Chief Seattle,
Yeah.
right?
Like that was the only quote that was like on the internet for a while, right? And we're like, yeah.
You know, it means that human
Now
beings
you're
are
here.
not, we're not just human beings alone to our own suffering, right? The
Hmm.
human condition is very difficult. Our songs say as much as that. There's a Crazy Horse song. O kichize ke he washte wala ke na io te he waki yelo. That means I like the fight. O kichize washte wala ke. I like the fight
Mm-hmm.
even though it's difficult, even though I'm having a hard time. Other songs, inform the singer and the knower that the human condition is difficult. Life is going to throw all kinds of difficulties at you. But there are systems of knowledge, of ritual, of ceremony within through which a human being can navigate that. We're not going to own it. We're not going to avoid it or ensure our successful transmittance through that. This is life, and life is really is ineffable. But there are these traditions, these knowledge systems that give to a human being the tools which it can create meaning. It can seek meaning and purpose and depth and navigate and continue on. The responsibility of the human bloodline, which is a huge responsibility. Think of the terror and the brilliant gift, the miracle that is birth and life. And if you have a knowledge system, a mythology, a way of creating meaning and sense and purpose out of all of that, then lean into that. And if you don't have one, lean into one and create a way to seek that out. And that's why we have the ceremonies that we do. And our ceremonies are hard. They are difficult. It's not fun to go without food and water and be out in the elements for 4 days and 4 nights. Like you're going to approach, your physical limits and you're going to be compelled to surrender. There's an egoic death. There's a process by which, what's the other quote? No person who steps in the river is the same. The river is not the same. The person is not the same. It's not the same river. It's not the same person. That's what happens in these ceremonies. And so, reach out for help, reach out for maybe a set of materials. If you want to explore further Lakota cosmology, I'd be more than happy to, run it back with you, Stephanie, or just connect with your community
Yeah.
and share more.
Amazing. I mean, I'm so grateful for this time and for where we went. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And like when I presence in the beginning, it's like reconciling the spiritual and the justice. And
When we
well, we
start
did
talking
it. We
about
did it.
it's so hard to do because I
I
get
know.
trapped. I get trapped in that when people are oppressing me or oppressing human beings
Yeah.
or oppressing the working class or stealing the sacred way of life from people, from human
Yeah.
beings, I get pissed. And
Hmm.
I wanna rectify that. I want to neutralize that violence and that injustice. But at the same time, and we did it, you brought us right back to this place of sanctity and this
Mm.
place where it's like a cool drink of water, right? That nourishes
Mm.
the seed and the spirit. It's important for us to go there and sharing what I know, nahachchi umaspe. I'm still learning. But what I've found is a lot of my teachers they're not willing to come out and say things in public. And I think it's got more to do with their concern for being judged by their peers, the
Mm.
others who are also within that demographic. For me, it's like Lakota or Sioux. But I don't think that comes from our frame of thinking. That comes from the church influence insecurities and scarcities that have been imposed upon Native American people today through the reservation system. And that's why I miss Crow Dog. That's why I miss people like Sonny Richards, who are my teachers. Sonny Richards was my first teacher, and he was a student of Frank Foolscrow, who is the spiritual foundation of the Lakota Nation in the 1970s. And Foolscrow was a student of Black Elk. And
Mm,
Black Elk, as you know, you can go to audiobooks, you can go to written materials. I'm not doing anything different than what Black Elk was trying to do 100 years ago or 120 years ago, or
yeah.
Sitting Bull. I have the advent of studying within the framework, or probably I have the disadvantage of learning the English language first because that's like a software, right? That runs
Mm,
the consciousness. Any
yeah.
language is that way. And now that I speak English, I can make these connections. There's a bunch of unwritten codes inside the language. I can cast spells with other English thinkers, and we can relate to each other. You can see where I'm coming from, I can see where they're coming from. And so we do have the ability to create a different reality.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we are, if time is a thing, we are creating a different reality. And it's these conversations and these transmissions that are, I think,
Mhm.
contributing. I know contributing. And there's forces bigger than us. I was actually
Mhm.
listening. I was preparing for our conversation, and I came upon your conversation with Aubrey Marcus. And
Oh man.
maybe it was like an older one, and he said something. I was like, yeah, yeah, that. And he said something like, we could look at all the forces, right? The earthly forces, the demonic forces. And when we're looking at the end of the world, we're looking at these cataclysmic narratives of doom and ends day. And what we're not taking into consideration, spirit, right? Like
Absolutely.
spirit, the role of spirit right now. And that's the curveball. That's the left turn or right turn or whatever we want to call it. The upturn that I think is a different cave.
Yes. That is the most important. The most important aspect is that we can't let other nefarious forces, other violent forces, unjust forces convince us that we don't have power. Because
Yeah.
that is the easiest way to steal power. There's another quote there, an Alice Walker quote. I'm
Yeah.
not good at remembering all the quotes, but I know the substance of them. You have to give yourself a different vision, a different myth. Crazy Horse said when he was here, the people need a great vision, and those that have it must seek it to the deepest blues of the skies. So you have to take courage. You have to be willing to face those demons internally and externally because they're there. There are other forces that are non-human forces that are at work, that are expressing themselves in different ways. To be able to appreciate that those exist and that those are working, and that there are ways to protect yourself, to assert your rights, and defend the righteous path from the wicked intrusions that confront any human being throughout their journey. We all have the ability to succumb to that little gremlin that's guiding us wayward, or to stay close to the red road, to stay close. Either sometimes the red road is wide, sometimes it's a razor thin path of enlightenment that human beings attempt to traverse. It's all there for us. And there's a lot potential, unknown, unrecognized, underappreciated potential within the human being. So don't ever write yourself off. Don't write off, just like Aubrey is saying, they're not contemplating the power of the spirit world.
Yeah.
Don't ever write it off because we're never out.
Yeah. I think that'll be a good place to say thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Your attention means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, I have one ask. Please head over to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and comment on the episode. You can also find all of the podcast platforms and show notes at catalysttalks.com. And again, please subscribe and review. It really helps us out. And remember, there is so much more happening in the invisible, so be true to you.